The Israeli cabinet has approved President Trump's Gaza plan and hostage release deal. Bring you all the details. We'll ask, why is it that all of those anti-genocide protesters, activists, they're suddenly totally silent? Why? It's very strange. We'll talk about how the West can actually win wars, led by great leaders like President Trump and, yes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. First, today is the DailyWire Plus series premiere of USS Cole, Al-Qaeda's strike before 9/11. The untold story of how 17 American sailors were killed, dozens more were wounded, and how Washington brushed it all off as a criminal act.
Al-Awali told us Al-Qaeda is planning to attack a U.S. Navy ship as it's refueling in the port of Aden.
There was a lot of warning out there to the ships. Did the Cole get that information? I can't tell you.
Bin Laden was getting very antsy. What could be next?
I don't think we missed any specific threats.
It wasn't if it was going to happen. It was when the United States was going to be attacked.
They were walking into a trap.
I saw a boat coming at us. They were close enough that I could see them smiling and waving. Then the explosion happened.
2 men in it was apparently not seen as a threat.
It may have been impossible to prevent.
Osama bin Laden had essentially declared war against the United States.
Certainly emboldened Al-Qaeda.
Why were we even operating in that port? What was the intelligence community doing?
No one connected all the dots until it was too late.
People in the U.S. didn't comprehend that there was an organization called Al-Qaeda. People living in caves, basements, who actively sought to kill Americans.
I think our government certainly had enough of the information to have done something.
They were focused totally on us. No one was looking up the chain of command.
We had an opportunity to disrupt what became 9/11.
USS Cole, Al-Qaeda's strike before 9/11. A 3-part series on DailyWire Plus.
DailyWire Plus members can watch the premiere of USS Cole, Al-Qaeda's strike before 9/11 right now. Not a member? Get 40% off a new DailyWire Plus annual membership with code FALL40 at dailywire.com/subscribe. Alrighty, folks. So, as of Friday morning, the Israeli cabinet has now approved an agreement to stop the war in Gaza. That, of course, is an agreement that is a stage 1 agreement in which Israel pulls back to a predefined border that is not the full borders of Gaza because Israel retains security overwatch over a majority of the Gaza Strip. The 20 live hostages come out. The 28 dead hostages are also supposed to come out, all within 72 hours of a ceasefire that went into place last night. Hamas is claiming that this is the quote-unquote end of the war, that it's going to be guaranteed by the United States. It'll be guaranteed by a bunch of other powers. The United States is saying that it could be the end of the war if Hamas were to disarm, if Hamas were to actually hand over governance of the Strip to somebody who is not Hamas. So the bottom line is stage 1 is the part that is on the books. Stage 2, we'll see what happens next. I think people are optimistic. We'll see if that optimism is justified. It is worth noting, by the way, that the decision by the Israeli cabinet last night did include all of the apparently terrible right-wing parties who were going to topple the government in order to scuttle the deal and who have been the great warmongers, according to the legacy media. The government did not, in fact, topple. Some of the members of the cabinet, who are from the more right-wing parties, the Smotrich and Ben-Gvir parties, they didn't vote in favor of the deal, but they also didn't walk out on the government. So the government maintains its majority, and Netanyahu's coalition government in Israel retains its power. According to Axios, the agreement calls for an initial Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Now, again, not from all of Gaza, from part of Gaza, that predetermined yellow line, we've shown you the map before, and the release of nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. By the way, in the future, Israel is going to have to radically rethink how it treats hostage situations because it cannot continue to simply release thousands upon thousands of terrorists and murderers in exchange for hostages taken by terrorists and murderers. That is a bad policy, and at some point in the future, it's going to have to stop. Obviously, now is not that moment. Israel wants its hostages back. Those people have been in captivity, held in tunnels, probably nearly starved to death. And there are reports that the Red Cross had to inform Hamas that in advance of release of these hostages, they should not overfeed the hostages because it might kill them. That's what happens in extreme starvation scenarios if you feed people a pita a day, which is essentially what the hostages are being fed, according to Eli Sharabi, a former hostage. Then you can't just give them a full meal. It could actually kill them. That's how badly treated the hostages have been, kept in terror tunnels, if not murdered outright by Hamas. The deal was signed by Israel, Hamas, and the Qatari, Egyptian, and Turkish mediators on Thursday. It needed the approval of Israel's cabinet to proceed. President Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, joined the cabinet meeting alongside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And there was a frank discussion that happened between all of the members of the cabinet and Witkoff and Kushner, a productive conversation, because in the end, the cabinet voted in favor of the deal. Israel is going to release some 250 Palestinian prisoners who are serving life sentences after being convicted of killing Israelis. It's a jailbreak on behalf of terrorists and murderers. Some of the worst terrorists and murderers that Israel has in its prisons. They'll either be released into Gaza or they will go into exile in other Arab and Muslim countries. Hamas is saying it needs more time to locate all the bodies of the dead hostages. Israel is saying that's probably false. According to the agreement, Israel, the United States, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar will form a task force to locate the bodies that Hamas says that it cannot find. So Hamas is trying to claim that this is a victory. It obviously is not a victory. It was Hamas forced to the table by the President of the United States, by the Israeli military, which was days away from finishing off Gaza City in terms of its military control of Gaza City, which was the last sort of Hamas bastion. It was pressure from Qatar and Turkey that was promoted by the President of the United States. So, again, the deal brings a significant pause in the fighting. Whether it is the final pause, that will be determined by Hamas, by what happens next. Obviously, America, its allies, Israel, they all would love this to be the end of the war, and they would love a transitional government to take power in the Gaza Strip and thus allow the Gaza Strip to flourish, as President Trump has talked about. Whether that happens or not is still up in the air. Yesterday, President Trump personally called many of the hostage families to inform them that their family members were coming home. Here was some of the footage.
This is amazing. Mr. President, we believe in you. We know you've done so much for us over the past, since you became a president, and even before that. And we trust you fulfill the mission until every hostage, every 48 of the hostages are home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
Monday, of course, Monday evening marks Simchat Torah, which is, in fact, the exact 2-year anniversary of the beginning of this war on the Jewish calendar, which is unbelievable timing. President Trump yesterday, he said that people are loving Israel again, that he's performed a PR jiu-jitsu, and there's some truth to that. Because the president brokered an end to the war that achieved Israel's signal goals, including the defenestration of Hamas as a power in the region, the release of all the hostages at once. Remember, everybody's sort of taking it for granted that this sort of deal would have happened a year ago or 2 years ago. Absolute sheer nonsense. Absolute nonsense. There are many deals that were proposed along the way. All of them involved Hamas openly retaining power in the Gaza Strip and a partial release of the hostages. The only deal that Hamas had put on the table to this point was a full pullout from the Gaza Strip by the Israeli military in exchange for the hostages. That is, in fact, not what is happening. And Hamas has lost its entire base of outside support at this point, thanks to President Trump. Here's President Trump talking about this last night.
It's brought the whole world together. It's amazing. I've never seen anything. It's so good for Israel. I spoke to Bibi Netanyahu just a little while ago. He called. He said, I can't believe it. He said, everybody's liking me now. Meaning him. He said, I said, more importantly, they're loving Israel again. And they really are. I said, Israel cannot fight the world, Bibi. They can't fight the world.
Well, and again, the truth is that Israel did effectively fight the world for 2 years, given the fact that the world decided to buy into all of the Hamas propaganda about genocide, about starvation, about targeting of journalists, and all of the rest. And Netanyahu stood strong. There's a tendency over here in Israel, and again, I'm over here for the Jewish holidays, which is, it's going to be amazing. I will say, President Trump is supposed to come on Monday, and this country is going to explode in support for President Trump. I mean, everyone is already preparing. I think there will be legitimately hundreds of thousands of people greeting President Trump when he comes to Israel on Monday to speak before the Israeli parliament and signal the release of the hostages. There's been a sort of peculiar move, both domestically and abroad, to say that it was all President Trump as opposed to some Bibi Netanyahu. And that, of course, is ridiculous. President Trump is an incredibly historic actor, and we'll discuss in a moment all the things he did to make all of this possible. But to pretend that Prime Minister Netanyahu is somehow external to this entire conversation is silly. It's absolutely silly. And President Trump went on to say that there will be demilitarization in Gaza, which, of course, is the broader goal here beyond the release of the hostages.
I'm not going to talk about that because you sort of know what phase 2 is, but we will
There will be disarming. There will be pullbacks. There will be a lot of things that are happening. You know, I gave you a whole list of 22 different things that will take place. And I think it'll take place. And I think you're going to end up with peace in the Middle East. But we have to get our hostages back.
President Trump also pointed out, he was asked about the so-called two-state solution, the idea that there would be a Palestinian state. And he said, listen, I have no opinion on this. This is going to have to be negotiated between the parties, which is the proper answer to that question, given the fact that the Oslo Accords, which was an attempt to generate a two-state solution with terror leaders on the Palestinian side, turned out to be one of the great fiascos in all of Middle Eastern history. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State yesterday, he explained the hard work that President Trump put into this, and there's no question that President Trump's incredible work here. The Nobel Prize Committee is a joke, but Trump certainly deserved the Nobel Peace Prize.
I think what's important to understand is that yesterday what happened was really a human story. There's a geopolitical aspect to it, there's no doubt about it. It creates the conditions for Gaza to one day be a normal place again and people to have a better life and Israelis to be safe. But yesterday was a human story. And because of the work you put in, and honestly, not only is there no other leader in the world that could have put this together, Mr. President, but frankly, I don't know of any American president in the modern era that could have made this possible. Because of the actions you have taken unrelated to this and because of who you are and what you've done and how you're viewed. And this weekend, because of that, at some point very soon, we are going to see 20 living human beings emerge from the darkness into the light for the first time in 2 years. And that is because not only were you used the credibility and the power and the prestige of this office and the relationships you created, and you committed yourself to making it happen. And I think it will go down as a historic moment in the history of our country and something our country should be very proud of.
No question about that. American Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, also talked yesterday about this. He pointed out that President Trump brought everyone together.
There were a lot of people at the embassy that did a lot of just groundwork, but the real key is President Trump. He's the one that made this happen. Certainly envoys Witkoff and Jared Kushner were a very big part of sealing the deal, bringing it together. But this would never have happened without the leadership of President Trump. He brought people together that no one thought would ever sit together, talk, and come to an agreement. And it's really a remarkable day. And I'll tell you, there is a great sigh of relief being heaved throughout Israel today, because this is a day that everyone here has been praying to happen for 2 solid years.
Okay, and he is certainly right about that. Jared Kushner said yesterday, apparently, according to Channel 14, quote, I really want to say that none of this would have been possible without the heroism of the IDF and the soldiers, what they accomplished not only in Gaza, but also across the entire arena over the past 2 years, in eliminating Hezbollah in the north and significantly weakening it, and also in what you did to Iran. All of this created a huge impact, especially when you see how your citizen army, I know that for many of you, maybe all of you, you have family members and friends who took part in this effort, sacrificed enormous losses for the country, and fought to bring about change. I think it truly made a tremendous difference. I want to express a very special thanks to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who did an outstanding job on this matter and conducted the negotiations in a particularly impressive manner. You stood by your principles, and I think you and President Trump saw eye to eye on the ultimate goal. All right, coming up, I want to talk about how it is possible to actually win a war, because we are watching in real time as a war against Islamic extremism is actually won, a war with specific end goals that was achieved. How did that happen? We'll get to that. Plus, why are all these supposed anti-genocide activists so sour, so salty about a deal that supposedly ends a pseudo-genocide? We'll get to that. First, our society works because of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Americans should be able to speak openly and honestly about family and traditional values without retribution. That's a principle that Pure Talk proudly supports. Support the brands that defend freedom and pro-American values. I encourage you to switch your wireless service to Pure Talk. You're going to get great 5G coverage on an extremely reliable and secure network. I'm constantly using my Pure Talk. I mean, honestly, I'm on the phone like a lot, and I need great coverage. I need it for the best price with a company that I actually like and trust. For just $35 a month, you can do the same. You'll get a plan with a ton of data. You'll also get a free 1-year membership to DailyWire Plus. That's how much Pure Talk believes in what we do here at the Daily Wire. They also believe in creating American jobs and supporting small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, you can save even more while enjoying white glove service. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Switch to Pure Talk with a qualifying plan of $35. Get a free 1-year membership to DailyWire Plus. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro for a wireless company that's not afraid to share your values. Also, imagine you're relaxing at home, You suddenly wonder just how secure you really are when you hear that noise you don't recognize outside. With all the stories about break-ins and new security technology, it's natural to want that extra peace of mind. What if there was a smarter way to protect everything that matters most before trouble ever gets inside? That's where SimpliSafe comes in. SimpliSafe is different. Instead of a home security system that only reacts after a break-in, SimpliSafe is designed to stop crime before it even starts. Unlike traditional systems, their AI-powered cameras can spot potential threats while they're still outside. The moment a suspicious person appears, the agents confront the intruder, let them know they're being watched, and can even trigger a siren or spotlight if necessary, and that means real action before anything happens. And we've got SimpliSafe over at our studios in Florida. Makes us feel confident that everything is protected when we are out and about. Other systems might let you review footage after the fact. SimpliSafe's professional monitoring agents are always on, intervening in real time, contacting emergency services if necessary. There are no long-term contracts, no hidden fees. You can cancel anytime. Named Best Home Security System by U.S. News & World Report for 5 years running, SimpliSafe even offers a 60-day money-back guarantee so you can try it risk-free. Right now, my listeners can save 50% on a SimpliSafe home security system at simplisafe.com/Shapiro. That's simplisafe.com/Shapiro. There's no save like SimpliSafe. Again, I think that the most important thing here for the West, not just for Israel, for the West, is that it is possible, in fact, to win wars. I've spent my entire lifetime watching the United States and the West lose wars, or at least not win wars. Initial victory followed by gradual defeat, or bizarre interventionism without the full force and weight and commitment necessary to carry it through. What President Trump is showing here, what Prime Minister Netanyahu showed in Israel, is that it is in fact possible to win wars. Because let's be real about the timeline here. On October 7th, 2023, the genocidal terror group Hamas invaded Israel's borders and killed 1,200 Israelis, mostly Jewish, and abducted 250 Israelis and took them back to their terror tunnel hellholes. And those tunnels, as well as Hamas's vast arsenal of rockets, grenades, small arms, had been built up over the course of 20 years with the support and funding of nations in the region, including Iran, Qatar, and Turkey. And if you remember, all the way back 2 years ago, Israel did not just face down Hamas. There was the serious possibility that Hezbollah was going to enter the war on the same day. In fact, what they did is they started shooting kind of small rocket attacks at the beginning, gradually escalating. And Hezbollah, according to the military experts, was a similarly genocidal and far better armed Iranian terror proxy in Lebanon. They had hundreds of thousands of rockets, tens of thousands of which were armed with targeting technology. I mean, again, the speculation among military types is that if Israel had to go to war with Hezbollah, tens of thousands of Israelis could die in rocket attacks into Israel. In fact, over the course of the next few months, Israel's entire north had to be emptied of civilians due to those barrages of drones and rockets sent from Lebanese territory. I know people who were wounded at Israel's northern border, on the Israeli side of the border during that time. Israel also faced down a continuing terror threat from Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank. Syria, which was being used as a thoroughfare for Iranian arms for Hezbollah. Iranian-backed Iraqi terror groups, the Houthis in Yemen, and of course, the Iranian government directly, which wasn't merely spreading terrorism, but also speed-running a nuclear weapons program. That's where things stood 2 years ago. And 2 years later, the world and the Middle East has turned totally upside down. Israel has completely decimated Hamas, killing its entire top leadership from Gaza all the way to Iran. Israel has destroyed Hezbollah's efficacy and killed its terror master, Hassan Nasrallah. Its attacks on Hezbollah were so effective, the Assad regime in Syria completely collapsed because Hezbollah was holding up Assad. And it was really the Turks who sort of pushed over the regime by backing the terror group HTS. Judea and Samaria have been quieted by the work of the IDF during this time. Iranian proxies in Iraq went silent as well because of the IAF, the Israeli Air Force. The Houthis in Yemen are sort of the one remaining outstanding enemy, and they've been bombed thoroughly. They're a nuisance, but they are not an existential threat to Israel. And Iran's nuclear program, the greatest existential threat to Israel, has been set back years, if not decades, thanks to the courage of the Israeli Air Force and, of course, a timely, brave intervention from President Trump and an amazing mission flown by the American Air Force. And now President Trump has brokered an amazing deal. Truly is unthinkable, a deal that was not thinkable. The release of the final 20 live Israeli hostages all at once. Again, the speculation was that Hamas would bleed out the hostages. They would release 5, then they'd release 2. They would broker for ceasefires, lasting a longer and longer period of time, opening them up to rearmament. Israel would have to pull all the way back to the borders of the Gaza Strip. That was the supposition, and instead, this deal is final 20 live hostages released, all the remaining bodies released. Israel maintains a secure posture in the Gaza Strip itself, a transitional plan toward a non-Hamas future in Gaza, supported by regional allies, including countries that 1 moment ago were sending cash and weapons into the Gaza Strip for Hamas to use, like Qatar and Turkey. The possibility of future Abraham Accords with countries like Saudi and Indonesia are now on the table. So here's the question for the West. Here's the question. How is it that this war was won? Because it's hard to win wars. Well, the answer is the conventional wisdom was stupid, and it has been stupid for decades. And the decision makers here are out-of-the-box thinkers. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, he is somebody who truly understands the nature of the Middle East and Middle Eastern history. But President Trump is the real difference maker here, because President Trump decided that America would no longer just go along with the 80-year-old slogans promoted by the Arabists at the State Department. The conventional wisdom was that military action does not guarantee security in the Middle East. That is a lie. It was always a lie. It was always catastrophically wrong. In fact, every time Israel has provided for its own security, it was not through predominantly a peace deal. It was a peace deal after a victory. It was a deal after a victory. The Camp David Accords between Egypt and Israel only came after Israel repeatedly defeated Egypt in war in 48, in 56, in 67, and again in 73. The removal of Jordan as an overt threat happened after Israel won its war for independence in 1948, and then again in 1967 after it won the Six-Day War. It was at that point the Jordanian monarchy decided, hey, we're out. We're not interested. The Syrian threat was eliminated after 1973 without an actual peace deal, with basically a stalemate happening on the other side of the Golan Heights. Military action is the only guarantor of support and security in the Middle East. It was military action that removed every supporting pillar beneath Hamas's feet. Remember, it wasn't just that all of these forces that I talked about a moment ago were acting in coordination to attack Israel. They were all providing the support base for Hamas. The conventional wisdom said the United States ought to play a weird neutral role between Israel and its genocidal enemies. You saw this from Joe Biden. Kamala Harris talks like this all the time. Bill Clinton tried it until he realized that Yasser Arafat was totally uninterested in peace. But this was the conventional wisdom, was that sure, Israel was a strong ally of the United States, but America had to play honest broker between Israel and the Palestinians. And it turns out that that was not just wrong, it was idiotically wrong. The Trump administration openly supported the IDF. They openly provided the weapons. They openly provided the rhetorical support for Israel to win. And it was that led to Hamas giving up the ghost and to Hamas's allies realizing that actually Israel was not going to be forced to simply accept the risk of its own survival. The conventional wisdom said that if you threatened to kill terror leaders abroad, that would be conflagrationist and terrible. That too was wrong. Israel killed terror masters in Iran itself. In Tehran, Israel killed Ismail Haniyeh, the leader, the political leader of Hamas. And of course, it was the strike in Qatar that actually led to Qatar and Turkey deciding to press for Hamas's ouster, because basically what happened there is that Israel notified the United States. Israel then hit inside Qatar, striking out at Hamas's leadership. They missed, but the message was made clear, which was that Israel would be willing to do that again. In fact, the prime minister and all of his cabinet members said the exact same thing. And then the president said, okay, you know what? We'll come in, we'll give a security guarantee to Qatar so that this doesn't happen again. But we need you to end this war. We need you to work with Turkey to stop all of this. Sure, we're willing to consider F-35s for Turkey, but only if Turkey is willing to work with Qatar to pressure Hamas. It was a carrots and sticks approach led by President Trump. President Trump understands the Middle East better than all the so-called experts. And by the way, far better than both the supposed neocons, the people who are total interventionists, democracy in the Middle East. Trump is not one of those. But he understands it also better than the isolationists in his own party, who wanted to reject Trump's tempered and rational peace through strength in favor of what might be called cowardice through catastrophism. The idea that World War III is lurking behind every corner, despite the fact that President Trump is the most rational purveyor of American force in modern American history. There was no shot there was going to be World War III with one B-2 sortie over Iran. That was not going to happen. There was no shot that World War III was going to break out because Trump was backing the IDF's capacity to destroy Hamas in the Gaza Strip. That was not going to happen. The catastrophism was nonsense. It was nonsense from the beginning. Prime Minister Netanyahu, who soldiered through withering criticism, both at home and abroad, of course, for the great crime of seeking victory over those who would destroy his country, deserves credit here. Huge credit, obviously, as Jared Kushner says, to the Israeli people who mobilized in an unprecedented way to defend their nation and their civilization. We're talking about 45-year-old guys leaving 4 kids at home and their business to go fight in Gaza in the Miluim. Those are the call-ups, the reserves. And, of course, huge props to the American people who provided Israel the support it needed to win, both in terms of material and mostly by making the right decision and electing Donald J. Trump president of the United States. So thanks to the voters of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Thank you to all of those voters. It turns out that victory over genocidal enemies is indeed possible. What it requires is a smart strategy that bucks the conventional wisdom, and a desire to win, and a willingness to win, and the perspicacity to dismiss people who promote either a starry-eyed millenarianism in which everybody's going to break into democracy today, or a benighted conventional wisdom that fails every single time it's tried. So, believe it or not, some Democrats are actually responding well to President Trump's plan. Others, as you'll imagine, are not doing as well. First, if you're a homeowner, you need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles, and your equity is, in fact, the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document. They use a fake notary stamp. They pay a small fee with your county, and just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they take out loans using your equity or even sell your property. You won't even know it's happening until you get a collection or foreclosure notice, that is. So, when's the last time you checked on your home title? If your answer is you haven't, you need to do something about it right now. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Many people at the Daily Wire, including people on my own team, trust Home Title Lock to protect what's likely one of their biggest assets. Again, protecting that asset, which is probably your biggest asset, where most of your value lies, is a massive, massive issue. You definitely should do it. Use my promo code Ben at HometitleLock.com. You'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. Head on over to HometitleLock.com. Use promo code Shapiro. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code Shapiro. Also, you guys ever read protein bar labels and you feel like you're just reading off the ingredients to like a candy bar of some sort? Most health bars are not actually that healthy. They're packed with unnecessary sugar, chemicals. My team and I have tried a bunch of different bars that either tasted, like garbage or left you hungry again within an hour. Luckily, we then found Equip Foods Prime Bar. It's the first of its kind grass-fed beef protein bar with only real food ingredients and absolutely nothing to hide, with 20 grams of clean protein. Starting today, my listeners receive an exclusive discount on Equip's Prime Bar. It's become our team's favorite protein bar on the market, with 20 grams of protein in every bar. Made with just 11 clean ingredients like collagen and colostrum, these bars deliver 20 grams of grass-fed beef protein without the bloat. They're free from whey, seed oils, artificial additives, plus they're naturally sweetened with dates and honey, so they taste like dessert without the guilt. Producer Justin is always walking around with these things. They may be keeping him alive at this point. If you want to try the cleanest protein bar on the market that already sold out once, head on over to equipfoods.com/Ben Shapiro and use code Ben Shapiro at checkout to get 25% off one-time purchases or 40% off your first subscription order for a limited time. That's equipfoods.com/Ben Shapiro. Use code Ben Shapiro at checkout. Now, meanwhile, there are some Democrats who actually have been making the right sounds about all of this. John Fetterman, you would expect to make the right sounds, and he has the senator from Pennsylvania who's been shockingly good on a wide variety of issues, actually. Here he was yesterday celebrating President Trump's diplomatic victory following the Israeli military victory.
Do you think the president deserves a Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, I mean, if this sticks, I think the whole point of having a Nobel Peace Prize is for ending wars and promoting peace. And I'm going to make a direct appeal to the president. I hope he chooses to provide the tomahawks to the Ukrainians too, and give them the tools that they need to push back against Russia. And if he brings the Ukrainian war to its end, I'll be the Democrat leading the committee for his Nobel Prize Peace for ending both of these terrible wars.
Okay, so again, he happens to be correct about that. Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, he came out and said this was a step in the right direction. Again, Democrats are sort of dipping their toe into the water of rationality here.
It's a very, very positive step in the right direction. We're all hopeful that this agreement will be finalized, that the hostages will be released in a matter of days and returned home to their loved ones. Of course, that we can surge humanitarian assistance into Gaza to alleviate the pain and suffering that Palestinian civilians have been experiencing in the theater of war for the last 2 years, and that we can achieve not just a ceasefire, but a pathway toward a just and lasting peace for both Israel and the Palestinian people.
And Representative Dan Goldman, who of course is a Democrat, in fact, a Democrat who's involved in the impeachment of President Trump, he admits Joe Biden did not actually get any pressure from Qatar or Turkey. This, of course, is true. Then the fact is that Joe Biden was not willing to do all of the things that I just talked about that Trump did. Provide open and clear support, both rhetorically and in terms of unmitigated weaponry to the Israelis to win the war. He did not provide Israel with the capacity to do the things it had to do militarily. He tried to play, quote unquote, honest broker. He tried to slow walk his left wing. And he didn't pressure Qatar or Turkey to actually end the war in any serious way. Now, here is Representative Goldman admitting that.
I think the biggest problem that the President Biden had is there was no pressure from Qatar, from Turkey, from Egypt. They were actually facilitating in many ways what was going on. And that is really ultimately how it all came together.
So, I mean, but I think by saying that, it's sort of an acknowledgement. Trump has changed that dynamic.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think
absolutely.
that.
I mean, he's clearly.
I don't know how he,
changed
and I think there's a lot that remains to learn about what prompted that change, but I do agree, yes.
I mean, again, the thing that prompted that change is President Trump actually applying pressure and Joe Biden not doing that. In much the same way that there were people who were saying that Trump was sort of just a tool of the Qataris, but Joe Biden was actually going to be the one who stood up. Well, it turns out, you remember, that they said that Donald Trump was the tool of the Russians, but it was Joe Biden who was the guy who was presiding when there was an invasion of Ukraine. Again, the conventional wisdom tends to get it wrong an awful lot. Even some of the legacy media are acknowledging that President Trump did something unbelievable here. The Washington Post's David Ignatius admitted that Trump accomplished here what no one else could have.
The deal that President Trump is announcing played a key part in negotiating is a significant change. This war was blocked for 2 years. President Biden, who preceded him, was unable to find a way to stop it. President Trump found that way by being tough on both sides. And he'll take a victory lap for sure over the next few days, but it's deserved. There's no way that I can see that this would have been done without Trump's pressure in the final hours.
Hey, again, when you got the legacy media acknowledging that Trump did something right, you know he did something pretty incredible here. Meanwhile, ABC's Martha Raddatz acknowledges this is a remarkable achievement.
Tell us about the role President Trump played in bringing all of this about.
Well, Robin, there's no question that if this goes as planned, if we see those remaining hostages freed and Israel begin its withdrawal, it is a remarkable achievement, and President Trump most certainly deserves credit for his role. He has done this through diplomacy, pressure, and the sheer force of his personality and persistence. He dispatched diplomats again and again, made threats just in the last few days to Hamas, saying again if they did not sign the deal, all hell would break loose. And they had the bombing of Iran as an example of that. But perhaps most importantly, he pushed Benjamin Netanyahu in ways his predecessor and others have not, Robin.
Okay, that last part is just so ridiculous. The idea that Trump was pushing Netanyahu harder than Biden is totally insane. Like, totally crazy. Totally crazy. But the rest of it, she's got right. And the fact is the president and the prime minister work very closely together. I know there are a bunch of people who want to leak to Barack Ravid every bad thing about Netanyahu, and Barack Ravid at Axios is perfectly happy to print all of it. But then the president comes out routinely and debunks all of it. In any case, the overall there is correct. That it was the last 2 years of military force that pushed over all of the dominoes that led to this moment, brokered by President Trump. CNN's Abby Phillip. She says, listen, when it comes to the rebuilding of Gaza, maybe Trump can do it.
I mean, but do you think President Trump is somebody who can actually credibly rebuild? I mean, he just, frankly, likes building. And it might be a kind of absurd thought, but in a way, I mean, this is going to be a rebuilding project, not
Absolutely.
just perhaps some kind of nation building, society building, but like physically rebuilding the complete and utter devastation of Gaza. Trump actually really wants to be involved in that, and maybe he's the right person.
Okay, so, again, even members of the media recognizing the magic of Trump in this particular region of the world. CNN's Jeremy Diamond says this is an enormous moment for the region, and it absolutely is. And the possibility of opening up further negotiations brokered by President Trump, a world has opened up in the Middle East in which Iran does not bestride the region. It is more like Israel and the United States and its allies bestriding the region. A world has opened up in which the Palestinian issue does not threaten the rest of the region's peace, stability, and economic development. That is a Trumpian world. It just is. Here's CNN's Jeremy Diamond.
Yeah, I just need to underscore what an enormous moment this is for so many people in this region, for the people of Gaza who have endured 2 years of war, for the families of these 48 remaining hostages who have endured 2 years of absolute agony. This is a watershed moment. President Trump announcing that the first phase of this plan will indeed move forward.
Okay, so again, it is an amazing, amazing moment for the region. Now, I do have a question. Where are all the people who kept yelling about genocide? Where did they go? Like, seriously, where did they go? Because all the people who are screaming about genocide now, a deal is on the table that stops all of this, that frees hostages, that stops the bombing campaign in Gaza, that rolls back the Israeli military presence to a decided upon line. And they've all ghosted the internet. They're gone. They disappeared. Poof, they're just gone. It's kind of amazing. Now, you would imagine that if you spent 2 years fighting against an actual genocide, not a fake genocide like what's happening in Gaza, which is not by any stretch of the imagination or any definition ever a genocide. But imagine that you were fighting like a real genocide, like the Rwandan genocide, and a deal happened to stop the genocide. And then all the people who were fighting to stop it just disappeared. They didn't say anything. They didn't celebrate. They didn't say this is a good thing. They didn't give credit. They didn't try to, nothing. They just go totally silent. What might that tell you about those people? I mean, the first thing would be that they don't actually care about the supposed genocide, right? That would be the thing that would immediately pop to mind, that you didn't care about that it was all a lie, that you actually had another reason that you were doing this routine. The Washington Free Beacon has an excellent rundown of many of the so-called anti-genocide activists who have gone completely missing, like completely MIA. Mehdi Hassan over at MSNBC, right, former MSNBC personality, who now spends his days on the internet talking with wild lefties and people who like Marjorie Taylor Greene, as we'll get to in a moment. He put out a statement, "I love that we live in a world where we're all supposed to now praise Trump for his peacemaking and ignore the fact that at least 20,000 Palestinians have been killed on his watch with bombs and bullets and rhetorical support that he supplied to Israel." I mean, Mehdi seems pretty salty about the fact that Trump actually got to the end of this thing. He then went on to predict that Israel will violate the terms of the deal and all the rest. Like, not a moment of credit for Trump. Instead, no. We're supposed to be upset with Trump that the things that were necessary to get to the peace happened. Meanwhile, other prominent left-wingers, ranging from Bernie Sanders to anti-Zionist trash heap Peter Beinart, to Iran advocate Trita Parsi, to anti-Semitic UN official Francesca Albanese, spent their day casting doubt on the ceasefire's durability. Not a shock at all. Meanwhile, some of the loudest voices have gone completely silent entirely. Bernie Sanders, completely silent. He last discussed the situation on October 7th when he wrote the United States, quote, "must stop providing military support to the Netanyahu government." Weird. Trump didn't listen to him and then got to peace. But Bernie went completely silent. He's gone. Bernie won't shut the F up ever on anything. But here suddenly he's silent. He's gone. Gone. Representative AOC, nothing. Rashida Tlaib, nothing. Ilhan Omar hesitantly approved the deal, but then called for the prosecution of Israel for alleged war crimes. Now, I have a question. Why is it that they're all going silent or downplaying the deal that supposedly ends the pseudo-genocide that they have been promoting, that narrative? And the answer is obvious, folks. The answer is perfectly obvious. The war for all of these people in the West, not for Hamas. Hamas actually wished to win the war on the ground and just didn't have the capacity to do so. Their original plans called for them to actually link up with Hamas in Judea and Samaria and then to link up with Hezbollah in the north. Like, they actually thought they were going to win a full-scale war against the IDF and against the Israeli people and destroy the state of Israel. That October 7th would have been like the end of the state. But then they turned to plan B, which was, how do we win the PR war against Israel? And all of Hamas's allies were so happy to help Hamas. They were overjoyed to help Hamas. They couldn't wait to help Hamas Because not only do they hate Israel, but a huge number of them are advocates of an anti-Semitism that suggests that Jewish power is in control of all of the levers of finance and media and political and governmental power. And this provided them an excellent opportunity to try to make the case that Israel and the Jews who supported it, which is to say the vast majority of Jews, are terrible and evil and no good and very bad. And so they loved the war. That is the reality. All the same people who are like, oh, you love war. You love war if you want Israel to win. They loved the war. How can you tell? Because the war is ending, and everybody who supposedly, quote unquote, loved the war is very happy. And all the people who are supposedly sad about the war are actually, kind of sad that the ceasefire is happening or silent. Why? Because again, their goal was the delegitimization of Israel and a broader conspiracy theory about Jewish power. And when the war ends and they can't talk about that anymore because no one's going to care because it's going to be in the past, when that happens, then they are left bereft. What do they talk about? How does Rashida Tlaib promote lies about conspiratorial Jewish power when it's not pictures of people getting killed in Gaza every day because Hamas is hiding behind them? What does she do for a living exactly? What does Bernie do now? How does he talk about these issues? Understand that the Palestinians who died in this war for these folks were a feature, not a bug. And the way that you can tell that they were a feature, not a bug, is that they're not celebrating the end of the war. If they were actually concerned about those people, they're not celebrating. They're silent, or they are downplaying, or they're upset, which shows you what their actual priorities were. And it tells you also where their politics are going to go, because once Israel is not in the headlines anymore, once Hamas is not in the headlines anymore, then they're going to have to just turn to road anti-Semitism. Their anti-Zionism, they're not just going to go silent on quote-unquote Jewish power, Jewish control of Congress and all the rest of this trash. They're not just going to go silent on that. They're just going to turn it into something else. It'll be about some other aspect of Jewish power that must be combated. That horseshoe theory right, that horseshoe theory left, they will come together along those lines, which, by the way, is already happening. It is no surprise to find that Mehdi Hasan has been retweeting Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and Candace Owens. Like, that is not a shock. What did he retweet them on? Well, he retweeted Matt Gaetz promoting a lie that in an AIPAC event, various Congress people were walking around with QR codes that linked to their fundraising websites. That's not true. The QR codes were for security identification. Have you ever been to an event where you have a QR code on your placard that hangs around your neck so that security can tell what you're allowed into and what you're not? That's what they were wearing around. And Matt Gaetz lied about that because Matt Gaetz is a dishonest human being. And meanwhile, the commentary of Candace Owens speaks for itself. There's a reason why Mehdi Hasan has been pushing it. And the retweeting of Marjorie Taylor Greene is similarly about Marjorie Taylor Greene's conspiratorial, bizarre takes on the power of the Jewish lobby in the United States. Of course, Mehdi Hasan is promoting that. Of course he is. And that's also why Mehdi Hasan is very dyspeptic about the deal. That horseshoe theory, it is undefeated. It is undefeated. In just a moment, we'll get to why so many people seem silent about, the fact that President Trump just did a good thing in the Middle East. Why are all the people who are so upset about the bad images out of Gaza now going silent when those bad images are set to stop? We'll get into some reasoning. First, let's be blunt. Gold just hit $4,000 an ounce for the first time ever. It's currently up 50% for the year. That's not speculation, that's reality. If a portion of your savings is not diversified into gold, well, you're missing the boat. Here's the fact. Inflation is still too high. The U.S. dollar is still too weak. The government debt is insurmountable. This is why central banks have been flocking to gold. They're the ones driving prices up to record highs, but it's not too late. I recently bought more gold from Birch Gold Group. You can get in the door right now. Birch Gold will help you convert that existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. You don't pay a dime out of pocket. Just text BEN to 989898 and claim your free info kit. There's no obligation, just useful information. Facts don't care about your feelings, a famous man once said. And the fact is that gold has been a safe haven for millennia. What else can say that? Text BEN to 989898 right now to claim your free info kit on gold. That's BEN to 989898. That's what I did. I talked to them. I got all the answers to my questions, and now there's gold in my safe. And I did that a few months back, so actually I'm doing pretty well on that investment. Protect your future today with Birch Gold. Also, it's funny, when we started the Daily Wire, we thought that the hard part would be, the content. Well, it turns out it's all the other stuff that's the giant pain in the butt. The behind-the-scenes stuff, like hiring, HR policies, employee issues, that's the stuff that eats up your time. I'm not alone. When you're a business owner, every second of your time is incredibly valuable. So don't waste your energy and risk losing money. Focus on what matters most, running your business with help from Bambee. Here's what makes Bambee different. They give you access to your very own dedicated HR manager at a fraction of what it costs to employ somebody full-time. And get this, Bambee costs just $29 a month, whether you have 10, 75, even 100 employees. If I had Bambee when I was first building this team, it would have saved us countless hours and headaches. Instead, we got bogged down with the paperwork and compliance stuff, but we could have focused on growing the show, connecting with the audience even more. With Bambee's HR Autopilot, you'll never have to waste your valuable time getting into the weeds of HR policies, onboarding, or terminations. Plus, Bambee is month-to-month, no hidden fees. You can cancel anytime. Right now, get 1 month of Bambee for just $1. Go to Bambee.com, type in Ben Shapiro under podcast to schedule your first call with an HR manager right now. That's 1 month of Bambee for just $1 at BAMBEE.com. Ben Shapiro Podcast. Meanwhile, it's always amusing to see who's being given this strange new respect treatment by the left. And it's typically people who wish to destroy the right. Very often you'll see members of the right who go rogue, and suddenly they're given this strange new respect. They're being treated with kid gloves by the left, by the media. Today's candidate, and this has been going on for a few weeks, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been spending her time trying to tear down the Trump administration. Let's just be clear about what she's doing right now. She has opposed the Trump administration's foreign policy. She has opposed the Trump administration's domestic policy. She's attempting to tear MAGA down the middle. She has claimed that President Trump betrayed his own movement. It's absolute nonsense. She's not the only one doing this, of course, and many of those people are also being treated with kid gloves by the media while they say things that in any other world would get them shellacked by those same exact people. But suddenly, Marjorie Taylor Greene is meeting with wonderful praise, not just from Mehdi Hasan, of course, but also from Jimmy Kimmel, who's praising Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's been spending her days going around undermining the president's agenda with regard to, for example, the government shutdown.
The crazy thing is, for the last 2 years, Republicans were the ones screaming for these Epstein files. And one of them still is and doesn't care what the rest of the party has to say about it.
There is no amount of pressure they can put on me to force me to step in line on that, so to speak.
You know things in Washington are broken when Marjorie Taylor Greene is the lone voice of reason on the Republican side. I mean, what is going on?
And the answer is she isn't. The reason that she keeps doing the Epstein file thing is not because she thinks there's anything in the Epstein files. She does not believe, I mean, maybe she does because she's not a particularly intelligent human, but she doesn't believe that there is a lot, she shouldn't, based on the available evidence, that there's a lot of hidden material in the Epstein files. Because, again, Occam's razor suggests that people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, if there were, would be all over it. That all the people who spent, years railing about the Epstein files and then got in and saw all the Epstein files and decided they could release some, but they couldn't release others for classification reasons, went to a court to try to have it released, couldn't get it all released and all the rest of it. That those people are not covering up the gigantic Mossad child ring that Marjorie Taylor Greene and her ilk keep on promoting without any evidence whatsoever. The reason that Marjorie Taylor Greene keeps pushing this is for two reasons. One, she loves conspiracy theories, particularly ones that she thinks implicate Israel or the Jews. And two, Marjorie Taylor Greene is attempting to undermine the Trump administration because she does not agree with the Trump administration's policy directives, particularly with regard to the Middle East. So anything she can do to undermine the Trump administration at this point, she is doing. So she's going around now slamming Trump and Speaker Johnson and Senate Majority Leader Thune over their handling of the government shutdown and saying that actually healthcare costs too much. And so what we really should do is sign gigantic government checks about healthcare. And she's being met, of course, with just the wildest applause by these left-wingers who are very, very happy that they can now promote all of their dumb ideas via Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You know what? I don't think the shutdown is popular for either side. And so I see the shutdown completely different from maybe my party leadership. And I'm not putting the blame on the president. I'm actually putting the blame on the Speaker and Leader Thune in the Senate. This should not be happening. And I don't think, look, as a member of Congress, we already have a low enough job approval rating. This shutdown is just going to drive everybody's approval rating that much lower.
Yes. But so you're putting the blame on the leadership of your party?
Absolutely. We control the House. We control the Senate. We have the White House.
She's a useless congressperson. And yet the media are championing her. There's a reason she's on CNN, folks. They wouldn't have had her 2 years ago. Now they can't wait to have her on, because horseshoe theory is undefeated. Ruben Gallego, The senator from Arizona, he was out there praising Marjorie Taylor Greene as well. Look at that. Strange new respect. Strange new respect.
But a Democratic pollster responded to what Marjorie Taylor Greene said about that and grocery prices and said, wow, when MTG does economic messaging better than the Democrats, we should take notice. That's John Anzalone, who did polling for President Biden. Is she doing messaging better than the Democrats are on this issue?
Well, she's not doing better than me, but she's definitely doing better than a lot of Democrats.
Okay, so again, the strange new respect should be an indicator that something is wrong here. When the left is praising you this way, it's a pretty good, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do you think they're doing that because they have the best interests of President Trump or the Republican agenda at heart? Is that what you think is happening here? The same is true for people who are promoting conspiracy theories all over the place on the right. Do we really believe that those people are doing yeoman's work on behalf of conservatism or President Trump's agenda or the MAGA agenda? Or are they part of a gigantic demoralization effort to pretend that the victories that President Trump is winning are actually losses? Because when people are demoralized, then they turn to conspiratorial cult-like figures and watch their shows and promote their work. And then everybody goes home happier, except for the viewers who are dumber and the American body politic, which is more polarized. Okay, meanwhile, we can talk about some actual good news in the world of media. Barry Weiss has now taken over at CBS News. This is an undoubtedly good thing. Barry is incredibly talented. She's right-leaning on some issues. She is moderate to left on other issues. But Barry Weiss, again, is a person who is fully willing to hear the perspectives of the right and to promote those perspectives, particularly in discussion. And that is a wonderful thing. Good for Barry. Remember, Barry walked away from the New York Times because they came after her for her handling of Tom Cotton's op-ed in which he called for the National Guard to be released on rioters during Black Lives Matter summer. And then she went and started the Free Press, which is a tremendous outlet. A lot of high IQ, interesting writers from a variety of perspectives writing over at the Free Press. And she built that thing into a really successful thought-leading enterprise. And now she is moving on over to CBS News, where she is taking over as editor-in-chief. And that is an amazing move by David Ellison, who is the new leader over at CBS, now that CBS was bought out by Larry Ellison. And she's going to take that same editorial sensibility that actually takes seriously conservative and right-wing arguments over to CBS News. That is a sea change in the nature of media. Legacy media actually beginning to acknowledge the reality, which is that there's an entire half of the country they have been ignoring and pretending does not exist. And it's not just Barry. There's some other indicators here as well. If you take a look, for example, at the Washington Post editorial page, Jeff Bezos had remade the Washington Post editorial page because he said it's basically just a salon slate think piece pitch place. And that has now changed. Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen boasted on Thursday the newspaper was now a conservative opinion page after writing an article titled, "Yes, Trump Deserves the Nobel Peace Prize." And he is not wrong about this. There has been movement at the Washington Post toward more conservatism on the page. Now, I would say it's a little bit of an exaggeration to say they're fully conservative, but certainly they're taking those opinions more seriously. So, that is a victory. That is a good thing. And it's worthy of examining why good things happen and how good things happen. The way good things happen is hard work by decent people pushing the right buttons consistently for years on end, not people railing against the clouds, not people shouting about the fire in the sky. Like Barry went and built an alternative thing, and now she's the editor of CBS News. The Washington Post was a bad newspaper for years, and people talked about it being a bad newspaper for years. And then finally, Jeff Bezos went and is trying to do something about it. That is a very, very good thing. Okay, meanwhile, the Democrats continue their spate of incompetence. Abigail Spanberger is running for governor in Virginia. She's still up slightly on Winsome Sears over in that gubernatorial race. She had a bad evening last evening. So she was doing a debate or a town hall, and she was asked if men should be able to compete with women in sports. And here's what Abigail Spanberger, supposed moderate, had to say.
My priority would be to ensure that local communities, importantly parents and teachers and educators, are able to work together to meet the unique needs of each school and each community. And that is important. And I say that as a mother of 3 daughters in Virginia public schools. Exactly. And as someone who used to investigate crimes against children. The way that we keep our children safe is by ensuring they are safe in schools, which includes funding law enforcement and public safety.
But Ms. Spanberger, the question was, would you rescind the Youngkin administration policy requiring boys and girls to use bathrooms aligning with their biological sex? You have 15 seconds to clarify that question.
Yes, and my answer is that in each local community, decisions should be made between parents and educators and teachers in each community. It shouldn't be dictated by politicians.
Again, there's a bad performance here by Abigail Spanberger. The polls apparently are in fact tightening in Virginia. Right now, according to the brand new Signal poll, it shows that Spanberger is leading Winsome Sears by about 4%. That is a tight race. Okay, that is a much tighter race than it was even a month ago when she was leading by upward of 7 points. So, Spanberger's performance last night is not going to help her out. She also was asked if she still endorses the Attorney General candidate in Virginia, Jay Jones. You'll remember that that particular candidate was caught on text talking about wanting to murder his political opponents and saying that violence should be done to the families of political opponents because that's how you actually effectuate change. Here is Spanberger trying to avoid the question.
For you yourself, do you still continue to endorse Jay Jones? 15 seconds, yes or no?
We are all running our individual races. I believe my opponent has said that about her lieutenant governor nominee.
Ms. Earl Sayers.
And it's up to every person to make their own decision. I am running my race to serve Virginia, and that is what I intend to do.
Thank you, Ms. Spanberger. We just want to clarify, what you're saying is that as of now, you still endorse Jay Jones as Attorney General.
I'm saying as of now, it's up to every voter to make their own individual decision. I am running for governor. I am accountable for the words that I say, for the acts that I take, for the policies that I have put out.
Thank you.
I am responsible for the policies I put out and the work I will endeavor to do tirelessly for the people of Virginia.
Thank you, Ms. Spanberger.
Again, just a refusal openly to dissociate from people who overtly call for crime against their enemies. Well done, Democrats. Meanwhile, Dan Goldman is doing the same sort of thing. Yesterday, Goldman, when he wasn't giving accidental praise to President Trump over the peace deal in the Middle East, he is smearing ICE agents as violent. Here was Democratic Representative Goldman from New York yesterday.
Many of these ICE agents are masked. They're plain clothes. They're unidentified. And they're violent. So, yes, people are going to be scared because you have these unidentified masked agents who are screaming and violent and using excessive force a lot. So, naturally, you're going to be scared.
Okay, so, again, you're right to be scared, apparently, of ICE agents, but also he denies that violence is up against ICE agents, which, of course, is not true. It is up against ICE agents.
There are apps that are being created that are the sole purpose is to dox ICE agents. And there are people showing up at their houses. And there are families being threatened. Why would we not?
I think all of that is terrible.
Do you know this for a fact? Because I keep hearing this. I have not seen ICE.
And you're ignoring the facts.
About 1,000% upswing and all this stuff. I haven't seen examples.
We just had shootings in Dallas and Alvarado, Texas at ICE facilities. You remember that, right?
It is just incredible. Like, why do Democrats feel the necessity to downplay this sort of stuff? Why? Unless, again, it's part of a permission structure for violence that Democrats have created over the course of decades. Speaking of left-wing violence, so this person is apparently a crazy person, but was a left-wing oriented crazy person. We now know the identity of the person who sparked the flames that burned half of LA to the ground in the Palisades fire recently. He's a 29-year-old who regularly took to Facebook, according to the New York Post, to share posts about eco-apocalypses, mocked President Trump and his supporters, and pushed people to become vegans. Yeah, dude should have had a steak once in a while instead of, burning down half of L.A. One article he shared, climate change will force a new American migration from ProPublica, even included a thumbnail showing wildfires raging across a California hillside neighborhood. Other posts on the alleged firebug's Facebook included photos of Trump supporters crying after he lost the 2020 election, linking to a Harris-Biden fundraiser page, and more climate alarmist headlines. So he kept sharing over and over posts about how the environment was being wrecked. One of the few photos of himself on the page, he appears as a wild-eyed, mouth open, face painted like a skull covered in blood. Other online activity included creating disturbing AI-generated images showing cities burning with masses of people fleeing the destruction, according to prosecutors. So apparently he filmed the first blaze he set, reported it to the authorities, and then returned to the site to watch the firefighters battle it. I actually couldn't remember how much damage the Pacific Palisades fires did in 2025, so I asked our friends and sponsors over at Comet, which is a project of perplexity, how much damage did they do? The answer is that they caused catastrophic damage, burning more than 23,000 acres, destroying nearly 7,000 homes and businesses in the region. The destruction led to an estimated $150 billion in direct damages, with some broader economic analysis placing total costs, including business disruption and indirect losses for the LA area, as high as $250 to $275 billion. At least 12 people lost their lives in the Pacific Palisades fire. So this person was clearly mentally disturbed, but it is worth noting that this person was of the left. And meanwhile, the government shutdown continues apace. Hakeem Jeffries is making the claim that Republicans can open the government, ignoring, of course, the fact that he actually can open the government anytime he chooses.
What is bad precedent is the Republican refusal to engage in bipartisan negotiations. What is bad precedent is the Republicans embarking on a my way or the highway approach from the very beginning of this Congress. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Joe, you're exactly right. So if the government shuts down, they've made the decision to shut the government down. And they can reopen it right now if they chose to, with a rule change in the Senate. But I just explained it.
And so, again, we'll see if this works out for him. Again, I think that it's likely the president will cut some sort of deal here. But the reality is that Jeffries does not have a particularly good answer as to why he's continuing the government shutdown. Joe Kernan over at CNBC tore him up pretty badly yesterday.
There was an election, and the Republicans were put in a position where they were able to pass the big, beautiful bill, or you call it the big, ugly bill. To then say, we don't like any of that, so we're going to shut down the government until you take back all the things that you duly passed through legislation. If Republicans had tried to do that to the Inflation Reduction Act or any of the acts that Biden and that administration have passed, if they said we're going to shut down the government because we don't like any of those things you did, we're going to not pay our military, we're going to, not allow the government to reopen until you do what we want. After an election where the American people put Democrats in power, you'd be going crazy. You'd be going crazy about using a shutdown of the government with a continuing resolution to get what you want just because you don't like what the Republicans did. It's not how it works. It's bad.
And so he happens to be right about that. Meanwhile, the big controversy the media are latching onto today is the prosecution of New York Attorney General Letitia James. She was indicted on Thursday in Alexandria, Virginia, as President Trump's DOJ pursued charges against her. This follows charges pursued against James Comey, the former FBI director. She's been under investigation since May over a 2023 mortgage she took out to buy a home in Norfolk, Virginia. The grand jury ended up returning 2 felony charges, bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution. According to the indictment, James claimed on a mortgage paperwork form that a home she purchased in Norfolk would be her second residence. That claim allowed her to get a favorable loan on terms not available for simple investment properties. But apparently she didn't use the house. She instead rented the property to a family of 3. They allege she falsely stated in loan applications the residence would be a secondary home when she knew that she would use it as an investment property. So apparently she received improper gains of about $20,000 over the life of the loan. Now, what's kind of ironic about all of this, of course, is she doesn't really get to claim that she's being politically targeted. Letitia James politically targeted the President of the United States. She crafted a civil charge out of absolutely nothing with regard to financial documents that damaged no one. And so this one definitely falls under turnabout is fair play. Letitia James went after the President of the United States for supposedly making false statements in pursuit of loans, which she then duly repaid. And she did it herself. So her being gone after by the DOJ, again, I'm not a fan of politically targeting people. But if the goal here is mutually assured destruction, like don't craft nonsense cases in order to get your political opponents, then the people who did that, I'm not going to feel bad for Letitia James today. I'm just not. Especially given the fact that that resulted in a gigantic judgment that ended up having to be reduced by an appellate court because it was so out of this world insane. Alrighty, folks, the show continues for our members right now. We'll get into the question of whether Jack Smith, you remember him, the special prosecutor against President Trump, obtained telephone data on Republican congresspeople. Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not a member, become a member, use code Shapiro, check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.